Well, hello. Thanks for having me out to talk tonight. My name is Michelle Cork. I'm the district's early childhood transition facilitator. And my role is to work with families who have children in early intervention. Early intervention is the state of Illinois' program that provides services for children under the age of 3, so from 0 to 2, whose families have concerns that they need support with something happening at home with your child's development, maybe some medical issues, some parenting support. Do we have anybody, I think you had raised your hand that you have a child in early intervention. Have any other families that have children currently in early intervention? No, okay. Well, I'll just kind of go through just what the common practice is. I was digging up information tonight and I just started to come across more and more stuff, and I'm a real talker, so I do have a timer because Teresa's going to talk about the kindergarten piece and I can get kind of carried away. So when children and families are working with early intervention to receive services, the services will stop the day before their 3rd birthday. Part of why the state requires or has guidelines regarding transitions is so that there's a smooth transition and continuity of services. Every family is entitled to the information regarding transitions, whether or not they choose to partake in a public school program. What we do is provide an early childhood program for children between the ages of 3 and 5. Our student population consists of students who receive special education services. Special education services, as many of you probably know, can include therapies that children receive on an ongoing basis in their educational program. But we also service children who have what we call at-risk needs. They're presenting with delays or concerns, but oftentimes those delays or concerns are related to a lack of exposure to learning activities or materials in the home, or could be many times second language learners. So providing an enrichment opportunity or program for those students helps them gain the foundational skills so that they can move on and be successful in elementary school. And we also have a small portion of our program that services typically developing students. So parents who have had their children tested and have the skills that they need for their age can actually pay tuition to participate in our preschool program. So when I meet with families, first thing I help them to understand is what we do as a school district, but then also to guide them through the actual process of evaluations. In our district, the evaluation process begins with the identification of needs. So we really need to review all the information that early intervention provides for families. That information is passed on to the district, so we go through that. I meet with families, I observe the children at their home, and then we invite the families into our program to kind of talk about what assessments need to be completed. At that time, parents have the opportunity to give consent, or maybe they might choose another route, but when consent is given, children are scheduled for evaluations. And I'm just going to pause for a minute and point out, I do have a couple handouts if you didn't grab them. I have an English set and a Spanish set. So I have the outline, things that I'm kind of talking about. I also have a comparison chart, which I'll mention, and then the rights section of the parent procedural safeguards that relates to early childhood. So if you need any of those, let me know. So our department does a lot of what we call play-based evaluations. So because the children, we have to complete the evaluations before the children turn 3. So the family has the opportunity to have those services in place when the 3rd birthday approaches. So oftentimes we're evaluating our younger population. We use the play-based approach because that offers children the opportunity to warm up into that new setting and kind of show a variety of skills. A play-based assessment, we'd have a space that's set up like a classroom, and we invite students to come in a small group of 3. They're there for approximately 2 hours, and our assessment team includes a diagnostician, a speech therapist, and oftentimes extra support services such as an occupational therapist or physical therapist or social worker. During that time, they're presenting children with tasks and activities that they may encounter in an academic setting. And they're looking to see what information they can share, what skills are transitioning or displaying that they may have had at home, what they can demonstrate in this new academic environment. Because really that's one of the biggest changes for families going through this process, is what is considered a need. In early intervention, needs can be based on family dynamics, what's happening, the routines that the family has, the relationships between family members. So it's really kind of a broad spectrum of needs. When families approach the school district, what our focus, that lens changes, and what we're looking at is a child's academic needs and what is adversely affecting them in that environment. So we really kind of shift that focus. Evaluation is complete. Families are invited back in at a separate meeting to review the results. First and foremost, our team feels it's very important to just review a child's strengths. From that point, we identify needs, those red flags that may be a concern in the school setting. From there, we can develop a document, an IEP or individualized assessment, individualized education plan. That can outline the services that are needed in the program. Our early childhood program, we offer a wide continuum of services. We have center-based speech for families. We have classroom services, and we also have few students at the preschool level who qualify for homebound instruction. So that means they're too ill to come to school on a regular basis. Essentially, an IEP is a written statement of an educational program designed to meet a student's needs that's developed by a team, which does include the parents. Especially in early childhood, I feel like that IEP really needs to be a fluid document. Children change quite rapidly, and that document needs to reflect the changes in the needs that they may have. One of the other changes that families face when transitioning from early intervention to the school program is that overall delivery model. In early intervention, families receive therapists, they come to their home, they spend that one-on-one time with their children. In the school setting, that model shifts. It can be a combination of direct, indirect, or even consultative services. One of the things that we stress with families is that in addition to therapies, we have that exposure to the academic model. Sometimes minutes can change. A family may be in early intervention receiving, for example, 2 hours a week of occupational therapy to address sensory needs. In the school program, we take into account that 750 minutes of the academic environment and how integrated the strategies that is needed for the child to succeed, how they're built into that environment. So we try to help families see that shift in minutes. Another big change for families coming out of early intervention is the school year. Early intervention services are provided year-round. The school district, we do have that traditional calendar with our extended school year program. And extended school year is based on a child's needs, and we do have some students that come through that process that are identified as having those needs to have, which would indicate that plan would need to be in place for them. It's typically in the past a 5-week time during the summer where they can work to maintain a child's skill level. Just a little bit different focus than what happens during the school year when the focus is working on making progress. All right, let's see. One of the things that I copied for families or any administrators that are interested is a comparison chart that compares side by side an IFSP or an individualized family plan to the IEP. Talks about the target population, which we talked about being their younger students versus our 3 to 5 population in early childhood. And it just goes, it'll talk about eligibility, development of plan, review of plan. That's another difference for families. In early intervention, typically you're getting together as a team every 6 months. IEPs are typically reviewed annually with assessments, re-eval assessments in place every 3 years. The other big piece that I see families kind of trying to understand is how goals are written. Oftentimes in early intervention with an IFSP, goals are written very generally. For example, we would like our child to increase their language skills. And then they may be giving strategies for the parents because they do incorporate a teaching model. It's there to help families learn what to do with their child throughout the rest of the week. In an IEP, we have to have measurable goals. So if we're going to have a language goal, we've got to have benchmarks of, are we going to see a student using 2-word phrases or 3-word phrases 50% of the time, or with prompting or without prompting. It has to be very specific, and it has to be measurable. The staff has to be able to collect data and talk to the parents about if they're helping their children make progress. Let's see, I'm just making sure I've got my cheat sheet up here, so I'm just making sure I've got. All right, one of the something I've included on here, what I call common myths. One of the pieces that I thought would be important to mention is the idea of doctor's prescriptions or doctor's notes or medical recommendations. In the early childhood program and the school program, those don't necessarily mean services. The medical field cannot make recommendations in terms of educational services, just the educational field. Go out there and make medical recommendations. So it doesn't necessarily guarantee services. Certainly, anytime that a family has a concern about their child's development, we do encourage them to reach out to their specialist, their teacher, and get that team together to look at progress. A concern that I often hear families mention is, will my child be in special education for the rest of their life? And certainly not. As a child meets their goals, makes progress, they can be dismissed from special education services. We are certainly not in the practice of keeping students under that eligibility. And once again, with that meeting goals, we also want to see that children have functional skills in the academic environment. Early intervention to the school district program, another difference is auto eligibility. Early intervention has what they call auto eligibility. So for children who have maybe a birth weight under 5 pounds from prematurity or other medical conditions or diagnoses that makes them automatically eligible for services in early intervention. And that's not necessarily the case in the school program. Again, we're looking at the child and if that delay or disability is adversely affecting their performance in the academic environment. And in the incoming piece, that's what we're looking at the play-based assessment. Okay. The other thing that I brought today is right out of, I said, the procedural safeguards for parents, and it just goes over what the transition is, talks a little bit about the IEP, and I think that Sarah was the book that you held up that you're going to give away. This is a great resource. This does come from early intervention. Typically, every service coordinator is supposed to pass that out to the families. When I meet with families, of course, I'm always make sure that they understand this is just their public school option. We do encounter many families that decide to stay privately with therapy. Sorry, I have my timer on, and apologies. That stay with private, or they do community-based, or they just feel that their children are right where they would like them to be, and then they just decline school services in general. And that's fine. That's well within their rights to do that. That being said, I always encourage families to keep our number handy, because they can always call back. I always like families to know that the door doesn't close. So if they decide at one point that they're not interested in early childhood services, they can always contact us before their child would be eligible for the kindergarten level for any type of screening or further testing. I also, when I meet with families, part of my role is to explain the process, a lot of the pieces that I'm explaining tonight, but also to guide them through that evaluation process. It's my role to schedule their evaluations so that they are completed before the 3rd birthday. We like to give families time to go through the reports and the information that was presented to them, and then also give them time to know if this is the right fit for their child. And we never want families to feel rushed or pressured to sign an IEP. Let's see. The responsibility of setting up a transition meeting is on the agency that oversees early intervention. So each family is assigned a service coordinator, and is the responsibility of that service coordinator to introduce the school district with the family. Typically, that's done at the family's home. So part of my role is to drive all around our district. Our school district actually covers 3 counties, Cook, Kane, and DuPage. So each of those counties is overseen by a separate organization. So I work with each of those organizations to help facilitate all transitions. I think I did some fast talking up here. Let's see, yeah. I know they said to hold questions, but we'll jump into kindergarten. Yeah, we'll let Therese come up here, and then.
Okay, I'm all set. Okay, so I was a former early childhood teacher, and I've been in the district, I think now probably, I want to say this might be my 17th, 18th year. So I've really seen our program just really expand from the time I started here. But what my role is the kindergarten transition facilitator. So the children that are in early childhood, who has a child right now in early childhood? Okay, and I recognize some of your faces. So you might have already had conversations with me. When children are in early childhood, as you know, we have our models are least restrictive to restrictive. We have our blended program where children with speech and language delays may be in the classroom, and then we have the more restrictive models where there's typically 10 kids in a classroom, and they need a lot more support, okay? So it's a huge step from preschool to elementary. It is. It's a huge step. And Sarah's nodding her head yes, because I remember meeting with Sarah and trying to reassure her that it was going to be okay. So my role is, it's kind of twofold, that I support any of the kids that are actually coming out of our whole early childhood program, all right? So if there are kids that are going to need some additional support in kindergarten, I try to spend time talking with the teacher. I spend time sometimes even talking with parents, attending meetings, a variety of things that help bridge that step from early childhood to elementary, okay? One of the things that we do is we actually have what's called a transition card. I know all of the children that if you have an IEP in early childhood, that IEP is going to follow them to elementary. But what we also have is kind of a cheat sheet for teachers that we've developed that it gives all the strategies that they know work well for that child. Okay, and so it's very proactive. The classroom teacher fills it out, and I'm kind of the gatekeeper of these. I make sure they go out into the schools where those children are going to attend. Okay, so But this is kind of like at the fingertips of the teacher. They can really look at this right away and see, oh, okay, these are some things that I need to have in place. One of the things I also try to do is, we have a huge early childhood program. I can't even say what the numbers are, but I try to go out and do observations. So here's an example. Today I went to a classroom at another early childhood site because tomorrow they're going to hold an IEP meeting for this child. And I kind of am that person that sits there and listens to all the information. I'm part of the team, and then I kind of help blend some of those strategies over into elementary, okay? If I'm a resource for that elementary teacher to call me, whether the child is going into regular education or is going into a self-contained special education classroom. So, but my role is not to stay there with that team. My role is just to facilitate those positive supports and get them going and let the team take over and I back out, okay? So it's really just a lot of that bridging those gaps. If parents have questions, for me, when I'm at the IEP meeting, they're always able to ask me those questions, things like that. There are special ed specialists that are also, they are a part of those meetings and they know their schools, but I'm just kind of that person that really helps support that child and that teacher, okay? The other thing that we do to help that is we also hold transition meetings in March. It's a kindergarten, we call it a kindergarten transition presentation, where I talk about how do you get your child prepared for kindergarten. What are some things that we do? Now, every building has their own, and they do their own transition meetings, whether it's the beginning of the school, whether it's when we do the kindergarten rallies, but I also still do them at the sites like Independence, Illinois Park, and and those two sides of the district, we hold those meetings. And it just gives that parents another opportunity to really ask questions about kindergarten and what are the steps that I need to take, okay? Let's see what else I want to say about that. I mean, my title is facilitator, and that's what I do, is I facilitate those. I try to answer questions for parents if they're concerned about what regular education gen ed classroom looks like and what a self-contained classroom looks like. But typically those kind of questions are referred to the special ed specialist if you're looking at what kind of classrooms are there available. What's the continuum of services for my child, okay? I'm trying to think of what else, if there's anything else to share with you. Oh, I do meet with teachers also. They come to me a lot and they say, okay, so what are some things that I can do? Kindergarten teachers are always, I go daily to a different school pretty much, and offering strategies and things to kindergarten teachers that have children in their classrooms with disabilities, okay? Anything else to think of? Peggy, is there anything else? No.
You know, one of the things I think Therese touched on too, both Therese and I in our roles, we work in the shadows. We're kind of the stepping stones for families. So we work with a family, we kind of help them move through the process, but then we're back to those new incoming families. So we kind of help move them through the important pieces for families to connect with their child's educational team, meaning their teacher or the therapist or someone at that building. And from early intervention, it's that team that's been coming to their home, and it's hard to break those ties and bridge new relationships. And early childhood, for some families, 2 to 3 years, so they get close to those teams. And then Therese is there to support them as they get to know a new team, because parents want to know that the staff and the people working with them are getting to know truly who their child is. And then elementary is a different field, because you do change oftentimes a teacher year to year, depending on programming. Any questions? I know we just have one mom currently. Or
I have one question.
Sure, yeah.
You were talking about how there's like Independence and Illinois State Park and
Illinois
the
Park.
schools that you have. So what decides where they go? Like which
Oh,
one
that's
do
an
they go?
excellent question. Needs always drive placement. And so when we're looking or using that play-based opportunity to look at a child's needs, that IEP process, we're identifying what a student's needs may be in the academic setting. From that point, we look at how can we help address those needs. So we write goals. What does the child need to be working on? At that point, then we talk, who needs to be working on that with the child? So what specialty? Is it speech? Is it OT? And then how often do they need to be working on that? Then you look at what type of academic environment is going to be appropriate. As I mentioned in our the early childhood program, we do have a classroom-based program. We're moving towards more of a 5-day model. We, in the past, have had some multi-day type classrooms, but those are starting to be offered on more of a limited basis. Within that 5-day model, what we're really trying to develop is the continuity of class size, just so we have a couple different learning environments to meet the needs of our ever-changing community. Class sizes in the early childhood program can be a group of 7, goes a little bit, we go up a little higher, a group of 10, group of 14, and a group of 18. Each of those classrooms have a certified teacher and an assistant, sometimes an additional assistant. So during that play base, we're looking how is the student learning, what are they a visual learner, are they auditory learner? At the IEP meeting, when you're part of that and you're discussing all the results and the needs, then you look at where is all that going to happen for a child so that they can be challenged, they can make progress, they can be successful and participate. And then once you come to that point and say, all right, we're all on board, we know what type of academic environment our child needs, then the staff will help you say, okay, well, this is where it's located as close to home or wherever, if your child happens to be at daycare or childcare, as close to that facility as possible. We don't like children going far distances for their school program. And one of the things when we meet, because we haven't met yet, so I provide a full list of all the sites in early childhood in particular, but we have cluster sites. We're not at every early child or elementary building in our district. We're kind of clustered throughout the district. So we have some programming out in Streamwood, Bartlett, Elgin, West Side, Middle. So we're kind of all around. So then we look, but that's the location piece is kind of the last thing. Yeah.
And I mentioned Illinois Park and Independence because those are two of the our large sites. So if any presentations occur, we try to get the parents on the east side and the west side, and we try to come together in those two locations.
I have the same question for kindergarten. If your child's going into a program that's not at your home school, how do you decide what school they're going to go to, and when do the families usually find out?
Well, I'll reiterate what Michelle said. It's based on your child's individual needs, and then I will shift the latter part of the question. When do you find out? To your special ed specialist would be your person that you would talk to, or at the IEP meeting there may be a discussion about that, but typically your special ed specialist would be your person that you would refer to.
Sometimes, especially when children have been in early intervention, if they have 3 years of our preschool program based on birthday, I mentioned the annual review, but we do have a 3-year re-eval process. And so oftentimes that 3-year re-eval coincides with the end of a preschool career. Career. Yeah.
It is a career.
You, as a team, they're typically, when they call that IEP team, there should be, if that's, you have to check with your specialist about the dates. They'll oftentimes maybe collect some new data to help with kindergarten placement. Those typically can start anywhere December-ish, beginning of winter through the spring. So, if you can like know when you had your last annual review?
No, I mean, I know when the meeting is.
Uh-huh.
I think there's just a mystery on the programs. Okay, there's this program at this school, this school, this school.
I
and
see what
they're
you're saying.
Equidistant from my house.
Right.
How are you, is it just based on numbers at that point? Or do you look at the classes and try to, you know, fit children in, you know, with certain things in mind, depending on how the class is set up and things of that sort?
Well, and that's a difficult question for me to answer because I don't. My understanding is, and anybody, a specialist can correct me, our kindergarten programs have certain criteria for students, which is a little bit different from early childhood. Some kindergarten placements, special education placements, require some advanced testing, some testing from the social worker looking at adaptive skills, or from a psychologist looking at verbal or nonverbal cognitive skills. So you'd want to make sure that you touch base with your specialist and find out if those are needed assessments. In terms of understanding the programs that are out there, I know, and I'm not sure how you do this, my role is I do provide tours of families. I do encourage them to look at the classrooms. One thing I'm very clear with, and kind of, I don't know if you want to say a meanie about, but I make it sure parents understand that we're not teacher shopping. I know that's kind of an odd term, but my goal is to educate a family on what classrooms look like. So when they tour with me, they're looking at what, like that class size of 7 looks like, what that class size of 10 looks like, or that 14 or 18, so that when you're sitting in a meeting and you're talking about those educational environments, you'd be like, okay, yep, I got it. I know what that one looks like, and oh yeah, that's totally not appropriate for my child, and oh yeah, that one I can see where that might benefit. Not all families want that. They're not forced to do it, it's just an option. It's in the folder that's, families have that option. In terms of kindergarten, I know in the past sometimes the teacher has gone with families to look at some of the different options so you can converse intelligently at the IEP meeting about those environments.